All right, let's move on now to Kenya. That's what we're going to this morning on Breakfast Central. Close allies of President William Ruto of Kenya and his United Democratic Alliance, UDA, have reacted angrily to a suggestion by one of the ruling party's lawmakers that presidential term limits be abolished in the country. They described the proposal by Fafi MP Salah Yakub as the legislator's own view and not the official position of the party or the Kenya Kwanza administration. Mr. Yakub had said UDA lawmakers were working on a constitutional amendment bill to replace the two-term limit with an age limit of 75 years.
Now, what this means is that if the MPs have their way, they would give President Ruto the leeway to seek re-election for 4 terms or 20 years. Meanwhile, Ruto, aged 55, has not indicated any intention to contest beyond the current limit. Let's also tell you that the two-term limit in Kenya came into effect ahead of the 1992 elections following the repeal of Section 2A of the old constitution. The 2010, also constitution maintained the presidential term limit.
Well, we are looking to have our guest join us here this very morning. He's the governance and policy analyst, ABDULLAHI. Thank you so much for joining us from Mandera County in northern Kenya. By the way, how is that area right about now?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. Mandera is good, and people, the county government, remember Kenya has 2 tiers of level of government. So we have the county government and the central government. So the county government is trying to help people who are vulnerable, about 60,000 households in Mandera, affected by the droughts, and we are bordering Somalia to the east and Ethiopia to the north. So it is quite peaceful and very good morning this morning.
All right, so good to hear. Now let's go straight into this. Let's begin by getting your thoughts on the purported move by the UDA MPs seeking for a longer term. What's your take?
Well, I think first, the member of parliament can express his personal opinion under the Kenyan Constitution. Article 33 gives him the right to say whatever he thinks is right. But on the political scene, when you make utterances of that level, there has been backlash in Kenya, where most people on Twitter or social media and in WhatsApp group, people have been debating that this is not what we were intending to have when we repealed Section 2A 1992 elections. So Kenya has come through a very, brutal political process where the first 2 regimes were very repressive, committed extrajudicial killing and repressing people of different opinions. So Kenyans have come a long way to have 2-term limit. So a member of, and maybe it's even a way of testing the waters, whether Kenyans will accept such thing or not. But Kenya of today will not accept an extension of a president to have 20 years. Remember, Kenyatta came to power in 1963. He died in 1978. And then Moi, who was the vice president, then under the old constitution, became the vice president for almost 26 years. And that has costed this country a lot of lives and development in the sense that one person was the one making all the decisions in one party country. So when the democratic space was opened, today Kenya has more than 100 parties, even though there are less than 10 that are very active. So the member of parliament might be expressing discussions within the tables of the UDA, and maybe he was too fast to utter it in public, but the Kenya of today, that is not a priority right now, and most Kenyans, there has been a backlash that Kenya is facing drought, especially the northern counties, drought more than 40 years, one of the worst. So we have more pressing issues to deal with right now than that debate, but individually he has the right. Politically, it is not good for UDA and Kenya Kwanza Party.
I mean, this is not the first time that we've had conversations like this in Uhuru Kenyatta's time as well. Francis Atwoli was the leader of the campaign, stating that Uhuru Kenyatta should either stay in office or get another top position in politics. And his argument was that Uhuru Kenyatta was too young to resign. And now with this similar scenario, part of the argument is that if a president is doing well, he should stay in power. Now, one of the things we've seen in Africa would be that, or in African politics, would be that there's usually no smoke without fire. oftentimes something comes out to the news, there is backlash, and eventually we then find out that that is the position. And I'll give you a scenario in Uganda, for example, with Muhoozi Kainerugaba. We've had the Muhoozi project over and over again, and there were denials, of course, that they were not grooming him to be the president of Uganda. You've seen what's happened recently, and with the statements of him and his ambitions. Do you think that in the nearest future, this might in some way reveal the fire behind this smoke? Maybe this might be a smoke. I know you say that Kenya has more pressing issues, but do you think that this is something that will be considered in the nearest future?
Well, it has been considered, as you said. Atwoli and his surrogate men at Jubilee government have tried to bring it in form of BBI, Building Bridges Initiative, and David Ndii versus Attorney General have taken it to court. Remember, the drafters of the Constitution had in mind the kind of governance we had, and the kind of measures that are put in place constitutionally to make some very stringent measures that some of these things can come up. It has to go to referendum. I mean, 4 items under the Constitution must go to referendum. So they came with it in BBI. It went to the High Court. It was squashed, almost more than 70 clause. Reasons were given why it was unconstitutional. It went to the Court of Appeal. More damning, ruling were given against them. They went to the Supreme Court. It agreed. So the intention is to have some of these things. And then I think when Museveni came to power, I was in Busia, Kenya. Then I was a very small boy. Today I'm a very mature man, educated, and having a family. I have kids of my own. So African Benin is having almost 40 years. So, how many presidents did America have since Yoweri Museveni was in power? So the essence is to make sure that we have different people every 10 years so that the country can make progressive development. Kibaki came to power. If there was a president most Kenyans wanted to be maybe another time for another 5 years, is President Kibaki, who has opened up the infrastructure of this country, who has stabilized the economy. Then lifestyle was a bit cheaper. So these discussions are always there. Yes, as is happening in Uganda, we might not know, but as you said, maybe the president is prepared. But this is not a monarchy. Kenya, Uganda, or Africa is not a monarchy. This is not where one person becomes the king. It's a very democratic country where people vote so that they choose who becomes their leader every 10 years. I'm sure Uganda is not like us. They have no term limit. I think it's either Burundi or Rwanda. Most African countries, some do not have term limits. Kenya is among the few countries that have borrowed a constitution. They call it progressive here in Kenya, from South Africa, from United Kingdom, from UK, and made it in a way that it suits us as Kenya. And I'm telling you for a fact that the new constitution has been a very big blow to the political class, because everything they want has to go through a process, whether it is by an individual or whether it's parliament. There are certain rules that one must apply. And now that Kenyans are pressing issues, I do not think, regardless of how much they try, it is going to see the light of the day by having a referendum to only extend, regardless of how much people love you, you are paid to do your job. President Ruto sought job to be the president of this country. So this is not a monarchy like the president before him. He is the 5th president. So why the hell does he think, or his party thinks he is too important or God sent to Kenya as the savior or Messiah to stay in 20 years in power? No, he has to stay for 10 years, exit, then we have another party, and then another leader, and then Kenya continues. So it is indeed a discussion political class will have, but at a country, Kenya today, it's not going to allow such moves by very pedestrian statement by a member of parliament, who the defense minister, and I'm sure these discussions were had in the darks or in the silent places where these guys have tea or they have whatever they have, but in the light when it comes to this country, remember Kenya has more than 75% below 40 years. Kenya is becoming literally a very educated country. Majority of people in the suburbs are connected technologically. So news spreads very fast. I mean, when he uttered, immediately it became a subject on Twitter. Many senior lawyers found that very mundane. and reckless. So I think regardless of how much they try, Africans need to embrace progressive development, progressive political process where a person stays and abides by the constitution for 10 years, then he exits. There is no need to allow them to stay more than 10 years.
All right. Well, you've spoken so well, and I think we've used up our time very nicely. But before you go, let's take a look at a tweet that was indeed sent out by a political former, we'll put it that way. He was gunning for presidency in Uganda as well. We're talking about Bobby Wine. He talked about this. He put that tweet talking to Kenyans. He said, "Dear Kenyans, be vigilant. Save your country from Musevenism. This may come off as a lone MP making a ridiculous suggestion, but this is how it starts. Exactly how Museveni began schemes to remove term and age limits. Defend your constitution before it's too weak to defend you." That's from Bobby Wine, otherwise known as Changulani, and he made this statement, and we do know what's going on in Uganda. Very, very sane, would say, to talk about this again. But our time here is up. I want to say thank you so much, Abdullahi. Alas, we look forward to have you again. And we know and we sense that this conversation will come up all over again. And like you said, maybe they're having this conversation over a cup of tea and then somebody slipped it out.
We are holding on to hope that President William Ruto, upon his swearing in, has sworn to defend the Constitution of Kenya, and Constitution limits 2 terms. So many Kenyans are hoping that he is going to keep to his word. He hasn't spoken about it. So let's just hope that he puts these rumors to rest soon.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, always.
All right. So there you have it. A lot of conversations around. Don't forget, all of it's a conversation that we can go on and dissect and talk about it here this very morning.
I know how many African countries. You and I know how many African countries will be happy.
Mean, just let's not go too far. Paul Biya, 40 years in power. He's being celebrated, and there are mixed reactions. I mean, here on News Central, we've talked about it in our various programs.
Yes.
If you've been watching, a lot of people are saying, yeah, 40 years is too long. Since I was born. I mean, I saw one who said since he was born and he started crawling and walking, he's only known one president all his life.
The essence of putting term limits is to ensure that democracy should be democracy as is, giving everybody a fair chance at governance through transparency and getting rid of political decadence, which is something that a lot of people want to hold on to. I always like this quote.
But don't also forget that there's also a call that maybe the president Ruto should have more time, so he could use the first 5 years to clean the entire process of.
And if he comes back again, the second 5 years, he can work. And so that 2 term limits, that's enough time for you to work. When there is synergy in government, wherever you stop, the next administration will pick up from. That is exactly what democracy is and should be.
Well, that's what it should be. But that's what we're going to talk about again, whether we like it or not, here on this platform, always and every day.